Hey guys, how you doing? I'm Stu. For those of you that haven't met me, from Noble Barons Home Brew Supplies, Port Stephens, Newcastle, and wherever else you want to get your gear from, we can help you out. Anyways, we are here today to talk about very basics of brewing your own beer at home using extract kits. If you want to just write in the comments there where you're from, how many beers you've done, what you've been up to. If you've got any questions throughout the presentation, please just write them in the comments there. My offsider, my lovely wife, will inform me of said question, and I'll do my best to make up an answer if I don't know the answer. Anyhow, all we're going to do today is the very basics of home brewing. If you're interested in learning a bit more and going a bit further, we do have a course coming up at the end of the year, at the end of the month, sorry, in November, around at Grain-Fed Brewing in Young Street. I'm sure there'll be a link there somewhere that'll pop up. Anyway, first of all, let's go through what's in a starter kit. So this is a Morgan's Premium Starter Kit. This is your typical starter kit, one of a couple of different varieties we have in store. Very quickly going through what's in one, you get a 30-litre fermenter. Now, its capacity is 30 litres. We don't make 30 litres of beer because we need headspace because of what the yeast creates while it's creating alcohol is CO2. We need some headspace for that CO2 to be in there and also to be able to escape. So yes, it's 30 litre capacity, but we only do around 23 litres of beer at a time. You'll get a little airlock. This is an S-Pen style airlock. You get a little grommet, which will go in the top of the lid. You'll get a tap. You'll get a temperature sticker, which you guys can probably see there, the temp sticker. And in the back of the tap, there's a little, it's called a sediment reducer. It's got a little slit in it. That slit needs to be pointing up. It just helps to reduce the amount of trouble mess going into your bottles when you're going through your bottling process. So I've used this fermenter before, so it's all put together. A little trick I'll go through now. This will come with a little screw-in bung in it. Leave that bung in. Pour in some really hot boiling water. Slosh it around. Empty it out. Screw that little bung out. Screw your tap in. Make sure it's closed. Put some more boiling water in there. And then nip this up just so that it goes tight. You don't want to over tighten it, or else it'll click, and then you've ruined the thread in the tap or in the fermenter, and it's buggered. You're going to have to come and get a new one. So boiling water to soften it, get the tap to the position that you want. It won't necessarily always point down with these. It's just a flaw in the mold. Sometimes they point off to the side. It's okay. It still works. Obviously, we don't want it pointing up. It's not going to work too well, is it? Once you've done that with the hot water, throw a bit of cold water in there and test the seal and make sure it's all good. Don't just screw it in cold at normal room temp and think it'll work. It doesn't always do it. Go through that little process. Little trap for young players. You'll get a spoon. Pretty self-explanatory what a spoon does. You'll get a little bottle of low suds, which is a cleaner, and a bottle of sanitizer for sanitizing. Cleaning and sanitizing, one of the very important things you've got to do with your brews to make your beers better and to be successful. Can't sanitize something that isn't already clean. So clean it first, then sanitize it. You'll get your hydrometer, okay? And it comes in a little tube. It's not much of a tube, but we'll work on that. Oh, there's lights. Now I can see what's going on. Hopefully you can see my beautiful face. You've got a little blue bottler, okay? That goes up inside your tap. It's got a little check valve on it. So when you push on that, my hand is the bottom of the bottle. It fills your bottle from the bottom up. Release it. They do leak, they do play up. It's just one of those little things. Inside your bottler is a little spring, and you'll see the valve with an O-ring on it. Every now and again, pull that spring out and give it a clean. It's one of those spots whereby you do get infections building up, and some people do have failures with their beers when they play up. Back in there, spring in, back together. Nice and easy. You'll also get your first brew kit with the Morgan's one. Any others, they all give you a brew kit, comes with it to get you started. They have a Blue Mountains lager and a body brew. Body brew is dextrose, which is a corn sugar, which is highly fermentable, and that's what gives your beer alcohol. Carbonation drops, 2 carbonation drops to your 750ml PET bottles, which you get 30 of. They come with lids. They are reusable. You'll probably get maybe half a dozen uses out of them before you'd want to start to upgrade looking at glass bottles or even kegs if you want to go down that path. But you do get 30 bottles with your kit and lids to go with it. That is everything that comes with the Morgan's kit. Just put this out of the way. Bear with me for a sec. Extra things I would purchase. A little test tube like this is really handy because that test tube, as you can see, doesn't have a base on it for putting your hydrometer in, okay? These things don't bounce. They're really quite fragile. They're made of glass, but there's good margin on them, so keep dropping them and smashing them and coming in for a new one. No problem. Brush. I don't know why they don't come with a brush, but they don't come with a brush, so grab yourself a brush. Just good for cleaning out your bottles and your glassware. On that point, when you are cleaning, don't use anything too abrasive on your gear. If you use a scourer, you'll scratch the inside of your fermenter, and that's where you'll get bugs and germs growing in there, and your beers will go off. So just use the soft brush like this, chuck something like that. I always use a paddle. I prefer to use a plastic paddle. It just helps to aerate the wort a bit better. Instead of a spoon, it also does a better job of getting down in the corners. If you're bottling, you can get yourself a bottle rinser onto your bottle tree. What else have we got? Once you've gone through the cleaner and sanitizer that's in the kit, that does a good job. This stuff here is sodium percarbonate. It's a really, really good cleaner, and it breaks down to oxygen and water. It breaks down all those oils and stuff that comes from brewing beer, and it doesn't harm your stainless if you're using any stainless steel kegs and what have you. So really good. Couple of tablespoons to 5 litres of water. Throw it in all your gear. Let it soak it in overnight. Give it a good rinse off, and it's quite good. The other thing I'd like, grab yourself a spray bottle, and I like these phosphoric acid based sanitizer. Now it doesn't have to be this brand. Star Sand, Stellar Sand. This one's called Atomic. It's phosphoric acid based. You actually mix this down 2 mils to about a litre of water to spray on, leave on. So clean first with your perk or your cleaner. Rinse it all off, then spray this stuff on, and that's your gear sanitized. You don't have to worry about the foam. It's actually a yeast nutrient. So really good stuff, that gear. You don't need too much of it at all. As I said before, when you're done with your plastic bottles, go to glass bottles. These are a crown seal bottle, so you'll need to get yourself a capper. I did have a capper somewhere. Okay, that's your typical sort of capper. All height adjustable. Goes in under there, cap on top, pushing down, cap your bottle. There are other ones available, little hammer cappers and stuff like that. These, in my opinion, are the most stable and the most effective at capping your bottles. If you do stick with bottles, don't forget crown seals. You'll need those as well. The other thing people do use from time to time is a swing top or a flip top Gross style bottle. The advantage of these is you only need to change that rubber out. Okay, you can get them in silicone or rubber, whichever you prefer. I don't mind the rubber ones, but you don't have to worry about capping. 2 drops, beer in, bottle cap on, job done. The other thing I suggest is a 5 litre jug or something similar. I like to mix my cans and my wort in a 5 litre jug separately so that I know it's all dissolved really well. Then I'll put hot water in here. Then I will add my wort that I've created and fill that with cold water so that I know everything's dissolved really well. The other thing, and I've had a few people do it in the shop, they fill their fermenters or their brewing gear with normal tap water, but they just use a normal household hose that they'd use to water the garden with. I recommend not doing that because that rubber smell and taste does actually leach through and it will get into your beer and give it some off flavours. Don't use those. Go to Bunnings, BCF, somewhere like that. Get a specialist water hose. All this water hose does is make beer. That's it. Don't use it for anything else. You can soak this stuff in your cleaner with your tubs and spray a bit of sanitizer in there to keep it all clean. Okay. What I've done today, because I'm not near a tap where I am, I took the advantage of getting I've just got it down the floor there. My assistant's bringing it around now. 20 litre drum of water, and I'll put that in the fridge so that it's cooled. Excuse me for a minute, I'm still here. I've put that in the fridge so that it's cool, but I added what's called a Camden tablet to that. So a Camden tablet is sodium metabisulfite, and what it does, it helps to remove the chlorines or the chloramines from the water that they add to the water, especially after heavy rain and stuff, to treat our water. So that's the only water chemistry I do at present when brewing our beer. Quarter of a Camden tablet knocks out all the chlorines. I then put that in the fridge just to chill it down because the water coming through the tap this time of year can be a little warm and you might struggle to get your beer down to the correct temperature for your pitching your yeast or adding your yeast. You need to make sure it's a bit cooler. Get into that bit later. So there's nothing wrong getting yourself a drum, prepping your water the night before so that it's nice and cool, ready to go. Alrighty, let's make a beer. Actually, let's talk about what makes beer. What is beer? Beer is a carbonated beverage created by the gods. It's got 4 key ingredients. Malt. This is a barley malt. It's been malted. It's a grain. It's got hops. That's a combination of Centennial and Amarillo. It's got yeast, which with these ones comes in under the can. Say with your Morgan's one, it'll come with a little yeasty under the can. That fella there. Water, hops, malt, and yeast. Your job as a brewer is to make wort. The better a job you do of making wort, the easier job your yeast will have of creating beer. I'm getting instructions from the side here. Bear with me for a sec. Okay, I'll pass you those across. Job done. Yes, boss. Right. Hops give flavour and aroma to your beers. There's 2 ways to use it, okay? So you can use hops as a bittering hop, and there's plenty of different varieties. If I was to soak these hops in some hot water, it releases all the oils and the hops and creates bitterness. That gives your beer a bitter flavour. Now, if you do that too much, your beer will be too bitter. If you don't do it enough, it won't have enough bitterness in it. The advantage of the cans is these are done hot and they've added bittering hops. So that part of the process has been done for us. Generally, we use our hops in the cans for dry hopping only, okay? Now, depending on your taste and the style of beer you want to do, as to how much hops you want to add. We generally add our hops on day 3 or day 4, simply for flavour and aroma. There's heaps of different hops. Come into the shop, have a chat to us and we'll help you out. We've also got recipe sheets and stuff online for all that. Malt, we don't need to worry about that today because it's been done in the can for us. Yeasty, as I said, comes in under the can. Now we're just going to use the can yeast in this. We're just going to use the can yeast in this because it'll be sufficient for what we're doing today. If you want to get more hop flavour. If you want to get clearer beers, use better yeasts. These will come in about a 5 or 7 gram sachet. Generally, the separate yeast you buy are around the 11 grams, so you get a lot more yeast cells when you're doing your brew. Just on the malt thing, I didn't add, that's the grain. They then crack it up, cook it off, and they spray dry it or belt dry it. So it gets crushed right up really, really fine, and then goes on a drying belt. And that's what we're going to use today. It's called dry malt extra. So we're going to mix those two together today with a yeast. Whoops. With a yeast, 20 odd litres of water to make it up to 23 litres. And we're going to ferment a beer. It'll take about a week. All right, let's crack on. So I've got my 5 litre jug. Just going to put some hot water in there. No, could you go out the back and just get me another jug, please? Thank you. First thing we should have done before I started talking is put that in another jug and stick it in some hot water just to soften the contents. It just makes it much easier to come out. So we'll just do that part now. We got any elevator music while this is happening? All right. We'll stick that over here and just let that soften for 5. Okay. We're using a Brick Road Citra Hazy beer today, just for something a little bit different. I like trying new stuff. We do hear from a lot of people that the malt can be a bit funny to dissolve at times. Okay, this is where your spray bottle sanitizer comes in, guys. One thing I'll do first, I'm just going to glove up. Cleanliness is next to godliness, along with temperature control. When we brew our beers, we brew them between 18 and 22 degrees for 7 to 10 days. The old airlock bubbling is one indication that it's fermenting. Just because it's not bubbling doesn't mean it's not fermenting. It could mean that it's just fermenting slowly. So the first thing I'm going to do, grab my scissors, where everything gets sprayed, including my gloves. Don't work with children, animals, or a shitty pair of scissors. All right. Get your water moving in the jug first. Whoops, made a mess already. Just add little bits at a time, yeah? Just helps to dissolve it off a bit easier. See how the steam on that has just got that sticking? I'm going to work out a way one day to stop that. I don't know how. Maybe there's an engineer in here that knows something about it. Now, you're not a good brewer unless you're making a mess. You're not a good brewer unless you've broken a hydrometer. And you're not a good brewer unless you've upset your partner by taking over the laundry, the garage, the kitchen. Do all of those things. Make all of those mistakes. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes. That's how we learn. So the idea is to try and keep this water moving so that this malt is just always stirring around. Smells delicious. Of course we can. Just knock that stuff off the side there. That's actually pretty well dissolved. I'm pretty happy with that. God, it smells good. Okay, we'll stick that over there. Now I'm going to open this fella up. Again, a sanitizer. Okay, it won't hurt your beer. Hey, first crack. Happy with that. Now this may not have been in the hot water long enough. May not have softened too much, but we'll have a crack anyway. That's pretty good. In it goes. Delicious beer goodness. Nice and thick. Now we're using the powdered malt today, but you can also buy that in a liquid form. So this malt in this can that we're pouring has been hopped with Citra hops to replicate this style, yeah? That powder that I put in, you can buy that as a liquid. It's just a bit easier to work with. Can make the beer a little sweeter, but it's a bit easier to work with. And it's unhopped. So it's just straight malt extract. Now, if you used one of those in conjunction with one of these, I would recommend upgrading the yeast, but you'll also get a higher alcohol beer that will have a bit more body and flavour to it. Dextrose, which is corn sugar, doesn't add body or flavour. It really only adds alcohol. Malt, whether that's light dry malt, which is from barley, or wheat dry malt, which is obviously from wheat, will add body, flavour and aroma to your beer, as well as some alcohol. Roughly for every kilo of dextrose, that'll give you about 2% of alcohol when keying. It's a little less when bottling. But if you work on roughly 2% for a kilo of dex, that's about right. Okay, so I'm pretty happy. Got pretty much all that out of there. That's good. Cool. Just in case I need to use that again, just going to rinse it off in a bit of boiling water. And have that sit there. Okay, bottle, don't need you. Can opener, don't need you. Hops, we're going to dry hop them on day 4, so we don't need them today. They came in the can. Next job, before we get too excited, I've already cleaned this with the sodium percarbonate. I've given it a really good rinse. And I've already sprayed it with sanitizer, but I'm just going to hit it again, just because I've got a bit of gunk on my gloves. Cleanliness is next to godliness with this stuff. So all these little things that I found over the years have made the difference to my beers and my process. And your process doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. It's whatever works for you. And that's the whole idea of this hobby. Make the beer that you like. All right. Sanitizer. Scissors can go away. Play with scissors. Lid off. All right. Just going to give it a spray. You can spray a bit of sanitizer in your airlock if you like, or just use a bit of water. Okay. Next important job. First thing is the tap shut. Test your tap. That tap is open. Tap is now shut. Nothing worse. Excuse me. Got sanitizer in my throat. Pouring liquid in there, the tap open. You can only imagine what happens. Okay. Spray the inside, up inside the tap, all around on the fermenter. The contact for this stuff is only a couple of minutes for it to do its job. I'm then going to put in some hot water in there. Only because I like to add and these fermenters are designed to take the hot water. Throw a bit of hot water in there, just because I like to add my wort to hot water just to make sure it's really well dissolved. That'll do. A couple of litres in there. Bit of a swirl, just because you can. Okay. It's also a good time, test your tap. Yep, nothing's leaking. Beautiful. Track again. Now, at this point in time, oxygen is your friend. It's going to help your yeast to take off. It's going to keep your yeast cells nice and happy for the first 24 hours. After that, it's going to create problems for your beer and you're going to get off flavours. Okay, put that fella over there. Get our spoon. I've rinsed that in hot water, but I'm just going to give it another whack. Make sure there's no lumps. There's no lumps, that's pretty good. I'm going to whack you over here. That, on this fermenter, that line there is roughly your 23 litre mark. It should be somewhere on here. There they are there. It'll have some little lines on it. Bit hard to see in this light. So I'm at 20 litres there, 21, 22. So yeah, that joint there, that little lip, that's our 23 litres. That's what we're going to fill to. All right, put this bad boy down here. This is the part that I hate, that I'd rather be doing with a hose. Anyhow. Get some more elevator music, please. So as I said at the moment, oxygen's our friend. Yeah, it's going to help our yeast to take off. First 24 hours, all yeast cells are doing is making more yeast cells, okay? So don't, and not always. I mean, sometimes you plant the tree and the tree grows. Sometimes you plant the tree and the tree dies. I'm pretty good at killing them, but you are replicating a natural process, so it's not going to work 100% of the time. But your job as a brewer is to give the yeast that best possible chance of doing its thing. And we do that with clean ingredients, clean gear, and a good process, okay? Just give it a bit of a mix around, make sure it's happy. Always use plastic on plastic. Don't ever buy a metal spoon and using plastic, because you'll create that abrasiveness again and you will get problems. Back in there, okay. I'm just going to sit and lid there for a minute, because what I'm going to do next is take a hydrometer reading. Okay, now we take a hydrometer reading before we have the yeast. The reason we do that is when the yeast is finished doing its thing, it's no longer suspended in the liquid. So we take a reading before we add the yeast, because at the end product, the yeast won't be there. So I'm still here. Crack your tap. Get your little, smells good, smells like beer. Hydrometer in here. This is where you find out if you overfilled it, which I have. So I'm just going to make a mess. That's all right. You're not a good brewer unless you're making a mess. Give it a spin. What that does is that knocks off any air bubbles. Give it a little tap. Knock off any air bubbles. We're just going to let that settle for a sec. And then we're going to take our reading. Now, with the liquid that's in there, it's going to hit the glass. And as the liquid hits the glass, it lips up, okay? You need to try and ignore that little lip. I don't know how well we can zoom in on their gnomes, but that's reading about 1,030. It's a little bit low. Probably prefer to be that a little bit more. So this may not be particularly high alcohol beer. That's okay. You can drink more of it then. Yeah, so it's about 1,032 actually. So we'll record that. We're going to let the beer ferment out for 7 to 10 days. On day 4 of fermentation, I'm going to add my hops. Say these ones. By adding hops, we crack the lid, we pour the hops in, we put the lid back on. That's it, no more. So we've taken our hydrometer reading, we're happy. We're now going to pitch the yeast. Now, when I pitch yeast, I just sprinkle it straight on. I take it out of the fridge an hour or so before, so that's had time to come up to room temp. But when you're storing them, you should store them in the fridge. Yeast is on. Yeast is in doing their yeasty things, creating alcohol and carbon dioxide. A swirl. Get all the yeast moving, get it wet, get it moving down throughout the liquid. I then just use sanitizer. Can just use water, doesn't really matter. Hot water, cold water, doesn't matter. Now, if you overfill it, the CO2 that the yeast creates won't build up enough pressure to bubble out of the airlock. So only half fill it. You will also find that over time, some water will run back in as the pressure in the airlock equalises. You might find one side's got more water in it than the other. It doesn't matter. All the airlock's doing is stopping any contaminants from going down into the beer. And it does that by sealing it off with the water or the liquid that's in the airlock. That's how that works. I wasn't timing myself. Chatting throughout the process, that hasn't taken long at all. And we've just done our basics of home brewing. Beer down. Going to wait 7 days. I'm going to come along, take another hydrometer reading in day 7 in the morning, say. Then I'll take another hydrometer reading in the afternoon or the evening of day 7 or the following day on day 8. If they're both the same, I know that it's finished. If there's still movement there, I'll let it go for another 24 hours, take another reading, record it. When they're the same 2 days in a row, you know that it's finished. From there, we can add findings or crash cool it and go to bottling or kegging and then onto a carbonation stage. But that's the basics of putting down your first brew. Has anybody got any questions they want to throw in the comments? Anything else you want to know? What time is it? 3:07. So I've got about 20 minutes. If anybody wants to know anything, now's the time to hit me up. If you've had any flavours you want to talk about that you're not happy with, if you want to talk about another way of brewing, we can very quickly go over it. James, you want to bring over a fresh wort kit and we'll talk about a fresh wort kit? So there's 3 main ways to brew, yeah? The extract kit we just did, the old kit and kilo, or fresh wort kits, or from grain, yeah? Using a grain father or specialist system. What a fresh wort kit is what was in the can, but it's not condensed down to a thick syrup. It's in a 15-litre bladder. You simply pour that bladder into our fermenter, add 5 litres of water, pitch the yeast on top. Dry hop day 4, and that's it. Closest thing you get to a craft brew without doing it from grain yourself. Heaps of flavour, really good craft beers. Is there a question?
There is a question. Tim would like to know, can you talk a bit about what you do at the end of the brew, findings, etc.?
Okay, so let's just say for shits and giggles, we're at day 8 and she's finished. Findings are a gelatin-based product and it acts like a flock if you use a flock in your pool, and it grabs all the proteins and just sinks them all down to the bottom. From there you can dump them off. If you don't have the advantage of temperature control, i.e. brewing in a fridge, grab yourself a little packet of findings, comes in a little 5-gram satchel, dissolve that in some boiling hot water. They won't all dissolve, it's pretty tricky stuff to dissolve, but do the best you can with it. When you're happy your fermentation's finished, simply crack your lid, pour it on top and put your lid back down. Now that will settle out over a week. If you've got, these are findings there. Okay. If you've got a second fermenter, it's called racking and clearing. I would recommend transferring from this fermenter into a second fermenter, then adding your findings to drop the proteins down. It just, after that yeast has been there for a week, yeah, if your beer stays on it too long, your beer can go off. So a little trick we used to do before I had all those fancy pressure fermenters was a bit of 12mm tubing. Aha, I knew I had some. I'm going to come around the front. Stand by. A little bit of 12mm tubing. Obviously, spray it with sanitizer. anything that touches your beer, you want it clean. Can't stress that enough. Whack that on there. Make sure this end of it is touching the bottom of your fermenter or keg if you transfer it into a keg. Crack your tap, lift your airlock off, fill your second fermenter with whatever beer's left, turning it off when it gets to the trub, obviously, because that's what you're trying to eliminate. From there, in that second fermenter, dissolve your findings in a cup of boiling water, pour them in on top, let it sit for another week, and it'll clear out over the week. It also ages the beer, so it's not a bad process to do either. That can be eliminated. You can put like a chuck up the back of your fermenter so that the tap's facing forward. All that trub falls forward, and you can try and dump it off into a container to dump it out. Then add your findings and clear it again.
What is trub?
Trub is yeast poo. So, while the yeast is doing its thing, creating, I'll come back around. While the yeast is doing its thing and it's creating alcohol and carbon dioxide, it also creates a bit of trub. And my trusty partner in crime here is going to show us an example of trub. Back in a sec.
There you go.
Okay, so this is a pressure fermenter. Plastic pressure fermenter. This is for the next stage up. This is for the next course we talk about at grain fed. But I've just transferred this beer into a keg. There's a bit of clear beer there left that's in, I'll jump on this side. Sorry, guys. There's a bit of clear beer left there that I'll put into bottles and keep. But I don't know if you can see it. There's a line there with some heavy stuff in the bottom. That's all hop and yeast matter. And that's called trub. That's what's left over from the yeasties doing their thing. What some brewers do, they'll harvest that trub and that yeast. You could make a fresh batch of beer and pour it straight on top of that trub, and it will take off fermenting almost straight away, as long as it's in a healthy state. So as long as it's been kept in the fridge and it's nice and cool, you can technically reuse it. You'll get a few goes out of it before you start to lose flavour. That's trub. Any more? That's it.
You've waited like 2 weeks. Then what do we do?
Okay, so we're all fermented. It's cleared up. We're all happy. We're going to do our transfer process. Again, you would get your 12mm hose from your tap to your keg. Fill your keg from the bottom up and then force carbonate it. If you don't have keg system yet, you've got your little plastic bottles and your carbonation drops and your sanitizer. You're going to do these ones, because we love doing these ones. I haven't done this in a while. Might have to come around and give it a bit of a hug. There we go. Cool. That's in there. 2 carb drops. Let's just do it, eh? Do it. These are just a mixture of sucrose and dextrose, okay? All your bottles are clean, of course. The lid. Two carb drops per 750 ml. You can also use sugar measurers. I'll try and do this without making too much of a mess. It's going to go up in there. Hits the bottom, opens the valve. Of course, I don't trust these bottlers too much. Let's see if this one works, just for test. That's holding that pretty good. That's pretty good. Top him up. Leave a couple of mil from the top, bit of headspace. Cool. Lid's on nice and tight. That's in there. Now, technically, you could drink that after 3 weeks. I wouldn't drink it till probably 3 months, okay? The longer the beer sits in here, the better it's going to get, because there's always yeast left over in the beer, okay? And what the carbonation drops are doing is they are slowly dissolving, and they're chewing up the residual, the leftover yeast is chewing up the sugar from the carbonation drop, and it's creating more CO2. The alcohol content might go up a little bit, but it would be like 0.1, 0.2%. It'd be pretty insignificant, if at all. Okay? Leave it for 3 months, and then you can crack it and drink it. Of course, you can drink it within 3 weeks, but the longer the better. Now, because that's secondary fermenting, you want that at a temp around that 18 to 22 degrees again. Okay? Nice, slow, constant temp is what we're looking for whenever we're brewing beer. If you get big temperature fluctuations during the fermentation process, during the secondary conditioning process, you'll get off flavors in your beer, and your beer won't be as good. The other thing you want to eliminate is oxygen. And it does that by fermenting and creating CO2 and pushing all the air out through the airlock. You can actually see that now. That actually needs a bit more water in it. That's already, just from me moving it, has adjusted the pressure in the airlock. So I'm going to have to add some more water to that in a sec. 3 months, then drink it, not before. Any more for any more? Okay, if you're kegging with your 12 ml line, again, tube in the bottom of the keg, fill it from the bottom up, apply your gas. Okay, if the beer's cold, 20 hours at 40 psi. If the beer's warm or at room temp when you put it into the keg, it's 40 psi, but do it for about 36 to 40 hours. Then release all the pressure throughout the system, the keg, the gas bottle, the regulator, everything. Set it to pouring pressure and then test it. You might need to add a little bit more pressure, a little bit more gas for a little while, just to carbonate it up. But stick to that rule, 40 psi for 20 hours or 40 psi for 36 to 40 hours. And you should be pretty right 99% of the time. I think that's it. I'll go back around here because I think my head's sort of half cut off. Just want to take the opportunity to thank you all for logging on and checking in. Don't forget, we've got that course coming up at the end of November around at Grainfed. It's a bit more one-on-one. We can do a proper brewery tour with Lockie down at Grainfed. We'll be going through the whole grain process. We will repeat this one, but you'll be able to tell me stuff because you'll all be experts because you would have already coursed up. And we'll talk more about Wort Kits, pressure fermentation, and upgrades and things you can do to get your beers better. And it looks like someone's just thrown a question at me.
What's pouring pressure?
Pouring pressure, so that's if you're kegging, the pressure that you want to pour your beer at. So you'll see online, there's a lot of people that say you need 3 or 4 meters of beer line and 8 to 10 pound of pressure to pour your beer. You got 3 or 4 meters of beer line, you got a lot of beer sitting in your line, and you're also using a lot of gas to push that beer through. You really only need 1.5 to 2 meters of beer line and 2 to 3 pound of pressure. So just enough so that needle has lifted up off the regulator. 2 to 3 pound. You might have to go to 5 if you've got a heavier beer, or as your keg gets lower, you might need a little bit more pressure to move it. But you really just need to lift that low pressure gauge on your reg. Just make sure it lifts up enough, just off the bottom line, and that should be sufficient. When you do a test pour, the best way I've found to do this is explain this. Make sure you haven't got a kink in the pour. You know when someone turns on a garden hose and they kink the garden hose and it squirts out? You don't want that with your tap. So just turn that pressure up a little bit more just to get a nice smooth pour. But 2 to 3 pounds, generally enough. No more than 5. Don't clean your glasses with detergent. Use sodium percarbonate. Use the old pink stain, the pink sterilizer if you want to use that. If you're using that stuff, it's full of chlorine. Make sure you give it a good rinse off. I stick to the perk because I want to keep chlorine away from my beers at all times. But the pink stain is really, really good for glassware. It's really good in the dishwasher. Just don't add any stainless.
What do you wrap up for the people that start? Can you just talk through what it was that you brewed today?
Okay, so we brewed a Brick Road Citra Hazy IPA, 1 kilo of dried malt extract, and I'm going to dry hop that on day 4 with about 30 grams of Citra, and we'll be able to taste that in store in a couple of weeks. That's it. Any more for any more, guys? Heading off very shortly because I'm going to go and crack a beer and clean this mess up that I made. Thanks again. Hope to see you in store soon. Don't be shy to ask questions. We're here to help. I want you to make the best beer you can, and keeping it clean, keeping that temperature right is the way to get there. Glove up. Drink and enjoy. Cheers. See ya.